Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to call upon stage our chief guest, Mr. Tarun Sharma, Chief Executive Officer, BMC India. May I request, sir, to take his seat on the dais. Sir is the VP of R&D and CEO for BMC Software. BMC is the 8th largest software company in the world and recognized as a leader in business service management. Prior to BMC, Sir worked for Virtusa, a global enterprise software service company. Sir was a senior vice president at Virtusa, leading the BFSI technology group. Sir co-founded a company in 1996 called EC Cubed that provided B2B e-commerce solutions to large enterprises. The company raised close to $55 million in venture capital and successfully launched several products in the B2B market. Prior to EC Cubed, Sir worked for various product and consulting firms in India, such as CDAC, NIIT, and TechLead Software. Sir has co-authored 2 books, Programming Web Components and Enterprise E-Commerce, a bestseller adopted by several management institutes. Sir is a software engineer by training and graduated from Pune Institute of Computer Technology in 1992. We welcome you, sir, to SITM. I now request Sir to preside over the session and share his views on our theme, Beyond the Communications Horizons, Unfolding New Vistas.
Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here. Actually, I would prefer that. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. I'm a lot more comfortable in front of the stage than behind the podium. So first of all, I want to thank Professor Patil. It's very difficult for me to call him Professor Patil because to me he's Sunil. Sunil and I worked together at BMC for a short period in time. So when he called me and said, would you find the time to come? And I said, not only would I find the time, it's an honor for me to come because I never miss an opportunity to spend time with students. And the reason is that you are the future, and that's where I intend to spend a lot of my time. Some of you guys are going to define and create the future. You guys are studying management, you're studying technology, you're studying telecom, you're going to be, some of you will be CEOs, some of you will play executive roles in large companies. And given the rate of change that we're going through, I'm very certain some of you guys are going to be doing very interesting things as time goes by. And so I never miss an opportunity to address students whenever I can. So thank you for having me here, Sunil. The second thing I want to comment on is the level of professionalism and organizational detail in putting this event together. I have to tell you, I spend a lot of money with my event managers to put something like this together. So you guys have done a superb job on pulling this together. And the third thing that I want to comment again is on how smart you guys are looking in your suits and saris. But what is really ironic to me is that while you guys wear suits, corporates are going towards jeans, t-shirts, and shorts. While you're trying to get ready for the corporate world itself is changing. You know, I personally spend a lot of my time looking at how do we create an environment for our employees that is fun, because the workforce is so young. You know, I have to almost think like a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old every single day to see what will attract and engage. You guys think very different, you behave very different. And so I oversee a group called BMC at BMC. BMC stands for Bindas Masti Club. And the group is responsible for creating a fun environment, bringing together sports and culture and dance and music. And every day that you walk into BMC, you'll find there's something fun going on. Either there's a chess competition going on, or people are playing cricket, or they're doing Zumba classes up in the recreation room, or they're doing yoga or something like that, you know. So it's really funny for me to see how you're preparing for the corporate world, but when you land up there, it's going to feel like college all over again. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking a little bit about innovation. It's one of the most used / abused terms in the industry today. So I want to just share with you what my thoughts are on innovation and why is it important? Why is innovation important for all of us? So one is, Sunil commented about how things are changing rapidly. You know, the technology in the last decade perhaps has changed at a much faster rate than you would have seen perhaps in the last century. Things that I see today, or the way I behave today, I could never have predicted or forecasted that 10 years back. The way I read books on my iPad. The way I watch movies, I download them from iTunes and then I use Apple TV to stream it to my home theater system and watch a movie like that. Gone are the days when I would have to go over to some store to get anything. You know, and like most households, the wife is always in charge, right, of finances. So my wife pointed out a very interesting thing to me one day, and she said, do you know you're spending about $100, $150 a month on iTunes? I said, really? I said, wow. I never imagined that I was spending that much money on iTunes, something that didn't even exist 5-6 years back. So I started to analyze, why am I doing that? And I found that almost every other place that I spent money on, I've stopped spending that money. So I don't buy books from Amazon.com anymore. I don't rent movies from Netflix anymore. So I've shut down everything else. All my other expenses are gone, and I've consolidated all those expenses on iTunes, because that's where I've downloaded music, that's where I download movies, books, applications, games, everything that I do for entertainment, and not just me, my kids. When my son, I got a 5-year-old son, and my daughter will turn 11 in October. It's amazing to see how my 5-year-old son interacts with the iPad. It's so intuitive. It's going to definitely be the future. I don't know how many of you saw the keynote when the iPhone 5 got launched. The rate at which people are buying iPhones or consuming iPhones and iPads is just phenomenal. You could not have forecasted 10 years back that there would be a device called an iPad that would just change the way you interface with computers. Now, not only is that happening in the consumer world, it's also happening in the enterprise world. In the enterprise world, we love acronyms, right? So there's a new acronym called SMAC. SMAC is SMAC, Social, Mobile, Analytics, and Cloud. The way people behave today, social media, you would have never thought that, or at least I guess I'm not a visionary enough to have realized the huge impact sites like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter would have on individual and the industry in general. Today, my buying pattern is different. If I want to buy a shoe, I put the shoe up on Facebook to say, has anybody bought this shoe before and what's your review? And based on what people tell me, I either buy the shoe or I don't. Nobody walks into a car store to go and buy a car. First, you do all your research on the internet. There is a concept in marketing called zero moment of truth. Your zero moment of truth begins on the internet. Google is the new conventions and conferences. People go there. The websites are the new booths. You go to those booths to do your research before you go and buy anything. Social has a huge impact on consumers and enterprises. And at the enterprise, we have a different version of Facebook called Chatter. We use Chatter, which is a Salesforce.com application, and it flattens our organization. I now know what people are doing that I would never in a million years have an opportunity to work together. I know of our sales wins in Africa the day that sales deal closes. I would never know that. You would typically have a newsletter that would go out maybe once a month, once a quarter or something like that, which would tell you all your wins. Now we know of our wins instantly. If somebody is in a competitive situation and is trying to get intelligence about a competitor because he wants to win the deal, he posts it on Chatter to say, has anybody won a deal like this? And he gets 5 responses saying, this is the strategy to go win the deal. Social is having a huge impact on how we do business. Mobile, I don't need to talk about mobile, right? Mobile and cloud are the two things that are most relevant to you guys. The whole telecom industry has arrived, and a lot of the change that you see is because of the telecom industry. If it wasn't, sometimes we look back and say, oh man, that dot-com bust was horrible. But if the dot-com bust hadn't happened, I don't think our infrastructure in telecom would be as cheap as it is today. When people were pumping money, there were billions of dollars being put into putting the fiber optics down. When dot-com bust happened, those companies went bankrupt. And you had billions of dollars of investment in infrastructure that there was nobody that was going to use. And so that just crashed the whole telecom pricing. And today, when we say we got 800 million cell phones in India, and every single rickshaw driver has 2 mobile phones, it's because he can afford it. He can afford it because of that event that happened in 2000, in the last 12 years. So, huge impact. Mobile, I'm not going to talk about mobile because you all know the impact it has, and especially impact it has to rural India. Right? When you have weather forecasting systems that's sending an SMS to a farmer saying, today's the day for you to sow your seeds because rains are right around the corner, that's a whole different ballgame. For the guy who never is going to see a computer, that mobile phone is his connection to the civilized world, which makes him more productive. Analytics have been around for a long time, but analytics on big data, the amount of data that is being generated today is amazing. And a lot of it, like Sunil said, is unstructured data. Now people talk about sentiment analysis. I have released a product, let me see what people are talking about it. Let me try to mine unstructured data from Facebook, from Twitter, from LinkedIn, from here, from there, and see what the response is. Is my product successful or not successful? And cloud computing is the next one, which again, you'll find it very interesting to see that a lot of the cloud providers are really telecom providers. If I look at Telstra in Australia, telco company, wants to be a large cloud provider, right? Infrastructure, because they have the infrastructure, they own the bandwidth, they own all of that. The companies today don't want to know where their resources are housed. They're only interested in knowing that resources are elastic and unlimited. If I need to get 100 computers online tomorrow, I'm going to be able to do that. And when I'm done with running my marketing campaign for which I had put those 100 computers in place, I don't want them anymore. I want to get rid of them instantly. Resources are elastic. Cloud computing allows you to do that. And so those are the 4 big trends that I see disrupting everything that we know today. And why is that relevant to us now? It has huge implications to a company like BMC because we are a systems management software company. So just a minute on BMC Software. BMC Software is the 8th largest software company in the world. A lot of you have probably not heard about it because we are not consumer software. So we are not a Google, Microsoft, Yahoo. We help manage IT in the back end because good technology, as we know, is invisible. So businesses that require IT don't really care about IT. They only care about the services that IT provides them. And so BMC allows for IT to run its applications and its IT infrastructure in a way that it's most cost-effective, most agile, and focuses on business services rather than on the technology itself. Rather than knowing a particular server is going to fail, you say that server runs payroll. And because it runs payroll and today is the 30th of the month and you're going to do payroll today, it has a huge impact on you. So you should care about it because your payroll service is about to go down and you'll have huge employee issues if you don't worry about that problem today. But if tomorrow that same server goes down, tomorrow's the 1st, you're done with payroll, your next payroll doesn't happen in 30 days. Now, when that server goes down, it's not that critical. You can reduce its criticality and fix something else that might be causing a business problem to you. So BMC software allows you to do that. Now, since we manage data centers and servers and so on and so forth, this SMAC is changing everything for us, especially cloud computing, because nobody cares about a data center anymore. For that matter, they don't want to have a data center anymore. How many of you know what cloud computing is? Or at least have an idea? Okay. Somebody explained it to me very, very simply, and I love the simplicity of the definition. If cloud computing was to be compared in a different industry, it's like saying, I need a liter of milk a day, and so I'm going to have a cow. Now, you don't need to have a cow to just use that 1 liter of milk. So if people could pool in the resources and you can build a dairy farm and then just pay per liter of milk, then that is when milk becomes a utility. It's the same thing about electricity. When you look at electricity, you don't care where that electricity is generated, do you? Do you even know where that electricity is generated? Do you know whether it's nuclear power generation centers or wind turbines or water? You don't know, you don't care. Do you care? No, you don't care. You just care that when you plug your appliance into a plug, there is electricity, it's 220 volts and it's 60 hertz and that's it, because my appliances are not going to break down. The same thing business looks at when they look at IT. They say, we don't care how you manage your infrastructure. All we care about is that the services that we expect from you are up and running all the time. They are utilities to me, and I will pay you only like I buy milk. I will only pay you per use, pay per use, pay per user, pay per transaction. I'm not going to invest millions of dollars in that infrastructure. And even when I do invest millions of dollars in that infrastructure, you very rarely tell me what have you done with those millions of dollars. So IT is back office. That's what they want it to remain. They only want services from them. Now, when the data center doesn't exist anymore, then what does that mean to us? It means we are building software for a reducing market, and we will be like the last VCR manufacturer. The VCR manufacturers might have kept making the technology better, but nobody uses a VCR anymore. I don't want BMC to be the last VCR manufacturer. We've got to be able to interpret the trends and then change our business so that you can move forward. And that is where innovation comes in. We have to innovate every single day. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about innovation. If you innovate, they will come. I think Steve Jobs, there's so many famous quotes. Henry Ford said, hey, I don't want to ask my customers for what a car should look like, because if I ask them, they'll just make me make a better horse carriage. Steve Jobs ignored every single rule for product management. He said, I don't care what my consumers want because I know best. I am the quintessential consumer. If I build it right, they will buy. And was he right? He was right. He was absolutely right. A lot of time companies get stuck in saying customer satisfaction to us means build everything the customer asks for. And then you end up in feature clutter and huge costs trying to maintain things that nobody ever wants, right? So let's spend a few minutes talking about what exactly is innovation. So innovation is successful exploitation of new ideas. It means it's required to make money and stay relevant in business. On the other hand, invention is different. Sometimes people confuse invention for innovation. Invention is the embodiment of something new. It didn't exist before you invented it, hence it exists now. So what exactly is then innovation? Invention is when you spend a lot of money to get a lot of ideas. There are a lot of research labs. I don't mean to pick on Microsoft, but you hear about Microsoft has research labs where they spend a lot of money, and IBM has research labs they spend a lot of money, and so on and so forth. And they get great ideas back from them. But pragmatic innovation is really about ideas to cash. Do I have a relevant idea that I can then execute upon so that it creates money for us and our stakeholders? Huge difference in attitude. One you're doing to prove to yourself that you're really smart. And one you're doing because it is relevant to the users of that technology. And there is a win-win. The users win. The guys who use the iPhone love the iPhone. But that's also made Apple the largest or the biggest company that exists on the planet today. It's a symbiotic relationship when you innovate. Differences between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Tesla was an inventor. He made some great inventions, but Thomas Edison not only was an inventor, he created one of the largest companies in the world today, General Electric. He was the founder. He was able to take his ideas and create a whole business around it and improve the lives of billions, I would say today, because he was an innovator, he wasn't an inventor only. Keyword in innovation is exploitation. Understanding the market, creating something of value to the people, and in turn increasing your own value. India will have to continue to innovate. In the past, India really rode the wave when it was about cost arbitrage. When we had services companies that said, hey, we will offer you cheap labor to be able to do kind of boring stuff that nobody in the US wants to do. But today it isn't about that. Today a lot of the value that is getting created because companies like BMC and others are putting incubators in India that will create new products that we'll take to market 2-3 years from today. New product development, new market products suitable for the new markets are being developed in India right now. Right? So you will have to innovate and ensure that you're exploiting the market. Let me ask a question real quick. When I mention the word innovation, which company comes to mind first? Apple. Apple. Steve Jobs, a famous quote from Steve Jobs. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And they're fairly passionate about what they do. They believe in what they're doing is revolutionizing the world. It's got benefit in it for the others, not just for themselves. And a lot of times, while they're very smart businessmen, that isn't the driver. Steve Jobs didn't start saying, I'm going to make Apple the largest company on the planet. He said, I'm just going to change the way people deal with phones. We're going to make them smart, we're going to make them like computers, and we will look at the overall experience of the user and make sure he never goes anywhere from here. Now, while we all talk about innovation, there is a standard definition for innovation, right? It's in this Oslo manual. You can go and download this to see what it says. So it says, an innovation is the implementation of a new or significantly improved product, goods or services, or process, a new marketing method, or a new organizational method. This is what they say is innovation. So what are the two requirements for innovation? One, it must be new or significantly improved. So when iPod came out first in the market, it was not the first MP3 player. There were many MP3 players in the market. But it was significantly better than the rest. So small details that Steve Jobs put into the iPod. For example, when you had CDs, and you took your CD player in a car, the Walkman type of CD players, every time that your car went over a speed breaker, your song skipped, because they didn't have enough buffers. When they were designing the first iPod, they put a hard disk in, but they still had that skipping issue. So he built a buffer which would read the music first, buffer it, and then play from that buffer. 20-minute buffer. He put a 20-minute buffer. So there was absolutely no chance that you would ever skip a song. Even if you were on bumpy roads and you were traveling through the hills, you would still be able to listen to uninterrupted music. So there were many things, the whole way of navigating and finding songs, and and obviously they've continued to innovate from there. There are 4 types of innovation. There's product, process, marketing, and organization. Can further be classified into 2 other types. They're either incremental or they're radical and disruptive. Both types of innovation are important. You have to innovate incrementally, but you cannot ignore the technology trends or other trends that will make you irrelevant. You have to have a good handle on both. So let me use some case studies, not from technology. Okay? So what is this? It's a watermelon. How much can you innovate with a watermelon? Apparently a lot. You can innovate a lot with a watermelon. So the Japanese farmers were having a problem with watermelons. And the problem was that the farmers grew the watermelons, then they had a whole distribution network to bring it to the supermarkets, and then the consumers took them home. They all had a problem with this. The farmers couldn't put as many watermelons onto a truck as they like because it's round and it's not optimized for shape. The supermarkets couldn't stock them on the shelves very optimally. It took up a lot more shelves than something else that offers similar dollar value. The consumers who took the watermelons home didn't have enough space in the fridge to put the water. So all of them had a problem with a round watermelon. So what do? So they said, we've got to fix this problem. And immediately people started thinking about using technology. Can I use genetics engineering? Can we change the shape of the watermelon? Can we do something in the bio field to be able to do it? Spent a lot of money, couldn't come up with an answer. The answer really was in this. All you had to do was grow the watermelon in a square box. If you grew the watermelon in a square box, the watermelon took the shape of the square box and it became square. You got a standard size watermelon. Now, you could stack those watermelons very easily on shelves in supermarkets. It was easier to package and distribute, right? It was easier to package and distribute. The consumers could now put them into the refrigerator much more simply. Right? I'm going to give you another simple example of the same thing. There was a toothpaste manufacturer who had a big issue. And that issue was, how many of you heard of this story? Some of you heard it, okay. Big issue with the fact that some of these toothpaste boxes would show up empty at the consumer's place. And that was a big cause of dissatisfaction. So the president of the business went and set up an elaborate consultants, he brought in consultants and they designed the whole assembly plant so that that would not happen. They spent millions of dollars and finally those complaints went away. So they felt like this process is really working. Now you have no more complaints. But something odd was happening and they found that after they put this new system, they should have detected there were some empty boxes. So the solution was that after all the packaging was complete, on the assembly line, the final step was that that box would get weighed. And if the weight was lesser than what the weight should have been, the machine would honk, and then somebody would come and he would pick that, no, it's an empty box, and then he would start the assembly line again and it would move on. But they were not seeing any of these 0-gram boxes anymore. So the CEO went to the assembly line to say, what's happening? And he found out that the guy whose job it was to pick those empty boxes and move them aside and hit the red button or the green button for the assembly line to start again, was so fed up of that honking sound that he had put a fan ahead of that weighing scale. So when the empty box came with the air of the fan, the box would just move off this, it would just fly off the assembly line. It never get on the weighing scale. So they spent so much of money trying to fix a problem that had a very simple solution. So sometimes you just have to think different, think out of the box. This is the term, think out of the box, so that you can innovate. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on innovation. Okay. How much does a car cost? How much does a car cost? It can cost a lot or it can cost nothing. India came up with the Tata Nano, the first $2,000 car. But what made it so cheap? Is it just because in India labor is cheap that you built a cheap car? Or did he compromise on the quality and said, hey, you know what, let's just put tin and make a car? No. They had to redesign everything. They had to look at the center console. They have stick-on side mirrors because they didn't have to glue any electrical wiring into it to get those indicators to work. It was simple. You just could put stick-on mirrors, plastic in-body parts, fitted components. There are no nuts and bolts. Everything is prefabricated components that just plug on and bolt on beautifully. They had to rethink the entire car-making process and the car design process to come up with a car that was affordable. There was a lot of noise about the Tata Nano. People said, what is this? This is a joke. There's no safety in it, and there are no airbags in it, and there's no air conditioning in it. But remember, it was built for those people that had only two-wheelers, and they drove on those two-wheelers with their two kids, 4 people on a two-wheeler. What is safer, this or that? So a lot of the Western world that criticized it didn't realize that it was being built for a certain set of people that could neither afford a car nor were the safety issues for them the same as the safety issues in the West. You can innovate with better technology, obviously. You have a regular fan, and then you have the Dyson fan, which has no blades. So it's a lot more safer, but also the airflow is a lot better. When you have a fan that rotates with blades, you have the air draft is not even. But using new technology, you could come up with some better airflows. Like I said, it's not all about technology. When Steve Jobs created the iPod, remember the iPod is a very simple player, or was a very simple player. All that the iPod could do, play, rewind, fast forward, stop. It couldn't do much more. It obviously held MP3 songs and you had a way to organize it. But it was a combination of the iPod and iTunes that made the experience for the user a lot better. The combination of iTunes and then the Apple Store made it even further better. You could get all your music in one place, you could buy it from one place. It was always much cheaper because you could just buy one song, you don't have to buy the whole CD, and so on and so forth. It dealt with piracy issues in a very, very smart way. You can innovate on user experience. This was Microsoft Word. When you have a product manager that is simply trying to keep all customers happy by putting features people ask for in that, this is what you end up with, feature clutter. Right? You've seen this, right? How many of you have seen Microsoft Word that looks like this? You guys are young, I can't assume anything anymore. They cleaned it. They brought the new ribbon in, and all of a sudden the interface was a lot better. Talking about, so that some of that was what I talked about, incremental, some of it was radical. But let me give you a case study from the past. In the past, when there were no refrigerators, people used to harvest ice. And then they used to ship those ice for people that needed ice. Then came the ice factories. People said, now we have cooling, we know how to cool and make ice. So you started to create. You didn't have to wait for the winter, or you didn't have to ship ice from far out places and lose half of the ice because it melted. Now you had ice factories. You could set them up closer to cities and people that were using those, using ice. Then came the refrigerator. Now you could make as much ice as you wanted. You didn't have to buy a whole block of ice. If you needed just 2 cubes of ice, you had 2 cubes of ice. You could manufacture it right within your house. But what is very important to understand is that none of the ice farmers became ice factory owners. And none of the ice factory owners became refrigerator manufacturers. They completely missed the trend. They were like the VCR manufacturers. They kept saying, hey, how do I make this VCR play better? Right? How do I make sure the head is better, sound is high, digital Dolby and this and that. But they just missed the fact that there was a whole revolution coming with CDs and DVDs. And the DVDs, guys, missed the whole revolution that is coming right now, digital music. I don't even recollect the last time I rented a DVD or bought a DVD. I buy all my movies on iTunes. I rent all my movies on iTunes. I never, ever use, it'll happen to all of you guys. I don't buy physical books. It's all on the iPad. So radical or disruptive technologies can wipe out entire industries. You've seen this happen too in cameras, right? Film, gone. Some of the Kodak, gone. Take a look at some of the large booksellers in the US, don't exist anymore, gone. Right? All of these guys have gone. So when there is who's the largest music distributor? Now, obviously, iTunes and Apple probably is one of them. But mobile phone users and distributors of content, the vast, a lot of them were making a lot more revenue on music than perhaps the music companies themselves. Could have missed the trend. Who makes alarm clocks anymore? Who uses alarm clocks? No one. Because your BlackBerry or your iPhone is your alarm clock. So if you're manufacturing alarm clocks, you're out of business. You could miss that. So sometimes the competition does not come from within the industry, it comes from the outside. You can miss it very easily. So let me summarize real quick. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that something cannot be done, or if something can be done, it's going to be complicated and it's going to be expensive. It doesn't have to be anything. You just have to think outside the box. Question habits. If a car is made in a certain way, then is there a separate or a better way of making the same thing? Today we generate electricity, we only know how to distribute electricity using wires. Now we're starting to think about, is solar really possible, and can you just generate enough electricity for the house you live in, etc. Question what you got. Be creative. Don't listen to the customers all the time. Don't listen to the customers all the time. Look for a better way. There could be a technology that could help you do things in a better way. In the end, the message is very simple. If you're not innovating, you will be irrelevant. Either you learn how to innovate or you die. And especially in times like these, when technology is changing at the rate at which it is changing, everything that you know now is not going to exist even within the next decade. Everything is going to change. And since you guys are the leaders of the future, since you're going to be the CEOs and the heads of marketing or the heads of product strategy in some of these MNCs, and you're going to define and decide the future that I will live in, I hope that you innovate a lot as you continue to move into your professional lives. That brings me to the end of my prepared comments. If there are questions, am I supposed to take questions, Sunil? If you have a couple of questions, I would love to take questions. Okay, in that case, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here, Sunil. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir, for sharing with us your experiences and insights. I now invite my colleague to felicitate sir with a memento as a token of our gratitude. So may I request